You know how everything's a subscription now? Music, movies, even socks. I swear if I...
To continue this ad, please upgrade to Premium Plus Platinum.
What? No. Anyway, Blue Apron...
This is a pay-per-listen ad. Please confirm your billing.
Oh, that's annoying. At least with the new Blue Apron, there's no subscription needed. Get delicious meals delivered without the weekly plan.
Wait, no subscription?
Keep the flavor. Ditch the subscription. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Welcome to How Are the Podcast. It's Gav, and you join us for a special episode as we're joined by a very special guest to talk all about somebody who looks like they are going to be coming through the door at Sunderland. Marcin Bulka, the OG Nice goalkeeper, formerly of Paris Saint-Germain, is on his way, and it's set alarm bells ringing across Europe, I think, because people are looking at this and wondering how the hell have Sunderland done that. So I'm going to grab the words of a man here who was one of those shocked individuals, I think. Alex Parker. How are you doing, Alex?
Yeah, I'm doing very good, thank you. And I think shocked is the right word to use. I'm very surprised. I'm about to sit here and talk about Marcin Bulka going to Sunderland.
Yeah, I mean, we are one of the underdogs in the Premier League next season. I don't think there's any getting away from it. But I think it was Fabrizio Romano who tweeted that Bulka is interested in Sunderland's very interesting project, ambitious project, I think the words were that he used. And I do think that, you know, because we've got French ownership, we've now got an incoming French director of football who came in from Roma, obviously a French manager. The links back to Ligue 1, to France are very natural to be made. But still, as you've just said there, a bit of a surprising one, I would imagine, for a lot of people who have been able to watch him over the years, are looking forward to seeing where he goes next. Maybe didn't expect it to be Sunderland, but, you know, an interesting one nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, just to say right now, I think it's not only surprising because of his reputation at the moment. You mentioned he played for PSG before, but it's also like surprising because in terms of pedigree, he moved to Chelsea when I think he was like 17, and then he moved to PSG, and he only moved to Nice really because of game time, I think it's fair to say. So he has been like consistently European level. So moving to a newly promoted side, like this is a very big swing for him. I think he had his contract's running out next year, so it was very clear he was going to leave this summer. I was expecting to cover him moving to, you know, like a Aston Villa or someone if they lost Emi Martinez. Like going to a newly promoted side is like quite a big step for him, as you've just said, and that's interesting to hear about the project. He really must be convinced.
Yeah, well, I think what people are looking at Sunderland, and because we are an underdog, we maybe do have to try and do things a bit different, because the Premier League, obviously, very difficult league to compete in. The last 6 promoted teams have all gone straight back down. So you take, you know, you try and take what you can from what those other clubs got wrong, and maybe do things a little bit differently. And I would imagine that means going out and signing players like this guy who probably, you know, people are looking and thinking, why is he not making the next step up to maybe Champions League level? But people do look at Sunderland now as a place to come where, you know, if you're a young player and you want to develop, you know, more than happy being a stepping stone on that journey, that we are an attractive proposition. And I would imagine that's got something to do with it. You know, he's gonna get the opportunity to play in the Premier League. He's come to a club which is developing a record of developing good young players. And I imagine that's very attractive to a player like him.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned young players. He is 25, but for a goalkeeper, that is still really young.
Yeah.
And like, this is a good moment to talk about that his journey into top flight football as well. He's still very young in his career. So if it allow me to waffle on for a little bit. So Bulka, I mentioned, he went to Chelsea when he was very young and then moved to PSG after his contract expired at Chelsea. He made 2 Ligue 1 appearances at PSG. He joined there in 2019, made his debut in August, didn't play for the rest of the season at all. His second senior appearance came against Lens in the following season, so this is 2020-21. He made an error in that game. He passed the ball out to the edge of the box. Classic error, you can imagine, where he just gives the ball away to the opposition and they just pass it into the empty net. So it doesn't play again for PSG ever again. He goes on a couple of loans, and he's not really making a dent there either. The most amount of appearances he makes before moving to Nice is at a club called Châteauroux, and he makes 9 appearances on loan there. Moves to Nice in 2022, I want to say, and the first season again, still he's like not even a starter. He made some Coupe de France appearances. It's only at the end of 22-23 where it's a really bad season for Nice. They end up finishing 9th. They sacked Lucien Favre halfway through, and the goalkeeper, Kasper Schmeichel at the time, former Leicester goalkeeper, he had quite a ropey year, I think it's fair to say. Certainly at the start, Kid did kind of rescue it at the end. And in the summer of 2023, Francesco Farioli came in, who you might know recently at Ajax. He almost won the Eredivisie there.
He almost came to Sunderland a couple of years ago before he took that job
really?
as well. Yeah. There was a it wasn't even a strong rumour. It was pretty well known that when, at the end of the season, when Tony Mowbray took Sunderland to the playoff semi-final, that they were going to bring in Farioli, but negated on it because of the fan backlash, because Mowbray was pretty popular, it's just an interesting, all these things seem to weave together very, very strangely, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, aside that, I wouldn't be surprised if he does move there in future, because he's very keen to move to manage in England. But so Farioli takes over, and he's a big part of his style of play. He's a bit like Roberto De Zerbi. He used to work under him, so he likes to build out from the back very intensely. Like in his season at Nice, so this is 2 seasons ago, Nice had the most amount of touches in their defensive third, more than any other Ligue 1 side. So it was really important for him to have a goalkeeper who was good with his feet as well as good with his hands. So Schmeichel got benched and ended up terminating his contract in the summer transfer window, because it became clear Bulka was going to be preferred. And since then, summer of 2023, he has been the established guy. But tying it all the way back to your point, he is still someone looking to prove himself, I think. He has only got 2 seasons of senior experience despite being 25 years old. So while he might look a little old, I think he's still got a very long career ahead of him, and he's still possibly looking to establish himself. And I think that's also signalled by his decision to move to the Premier League too, because he could have stayed at Nice and got Champions League football. They finished 4th in Ligue 1, which is a qualification spot. He could have moved to Turkey. I think there's a link to Galatasaray, and it was reported he rebuffed that completely. He's set on, I think, boosting his career and going right to the top. So it fits in going to a team with a very good sporting project.
I've seen some data and analytic accounts on social media talking about this, calling him the highest rated goalkeeper of last season in the top 5 leagues in Europe. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But the fact that they're talking about this guy in those terms piques your interest, doesn't it? I mean, why is he so highly rated?
I think, let's jump off that and go right into the deep end of stats. I will break this down as simply as I can, because I know this is the real deeper end of where people will listen and go, I've had enough of this, bring back the old football. So what a lot of people look to praise with Bulka is basically his performance against a stat called post-shot expected goals. I'll give you a quick breakdown. So I think we've all heard of expected goals by now. You might have a different opinion on the value of it. I think that's completely fine. Personally, for myself, in fact, you might be surprised. I think on its own, it's quite a worthless statistic. You need to pair it with a lot to actually make it valuable. But just as a recap, XG measures the quality of a shot based on its the position it's taken. Now, this makes sense, right? Let's say you're trying to evaluate how good a striker is. If they have an XG figure of 60 goals, right, that suggests they got in enough positions to score 60 times. And if they only scored 50, their shooting, their quality of shot was worse. It was worse than you'd expect. If they're in a position to score 60 goals and only score 50, then they're missing 10 goals here.
Yeah.
The version of this for goalkeepers is post-shot XG. So expected goals, as I just mentioned, it measures the location of the shot. Post-shot XG just measures what happens after, the quality of the shot. And by quality, I mean where it lands in the goal. So if a shot lands in the corner, it might give it a 97% chance of being a goal. So if the goalkeeper lets it in, it's you've not really underperformed. You've done okay. But if it goes in the middle of the goal, and it's as well as other things taken into account, if it goes into the middle of goal, let's say it's taken with the feet rather than the head, and it's on the counter attack or something, where or like it's in the box in settled possession. The picture I'm trying to paint here is a goal you shouldn't be letting in. It might give it a 20% chance of going in, and if Bulka lets that in, then that's going to look really bad for him, right? So we're on the same page so far?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm with you. Yeah.
Excellent. Right. So in terms of this metric, I should say as well, penalties are discounted because obviously goalkeepers are put at a very unfair disadvantage there.
Yeah.
So across his career in Ligue 1, Bulka has faced 73.7 post-shot XG, i.e. he's expected to concede about 74 goals based on the quality of shot he's faced, and he's only conceded 63 goals. So just over 10 goals more than expected, which does rank him very highly as one of the, there's a lot of goalkeepers in England, for example, Edison, who quite often underperforms this metric. So it really goes to show Bulka has consistently been a good shot stopper who saves shots you would not expect him to save.
That's interesting because he's going to come on if he comes to Sunderland, which it looks could be a possibility. He's going to be under a lot of pressure, isn't he? Because he's playing in one of the more unfancy teams. And even if we do well next season, and doing well for us would be fourth bottom, fifth bottom, surviving relegation. Even if he does that, the way we played last season to get promoted was backs to the wall, counter-attacking football, a low block. Do you think that would suit his game then? Based on sort of the not just the data metrics, but the eye test as well.
Yeah, that's a nice setup there to go into the eye test stuff. But that's a really good point because I think some people as well, I'm not sure if you had it at Sunderland, but I think a lot of clubs have heard about a brilliant goalkeeper coming to my club, and he's apparently amazing with the ball at his feet, and he arrives and it doesn't matter because he's just kicking the ball forward, and he's not actually a good goalkeeper for teams who like to sit back. I think Andre Onana at Manchester United is actually a really good example here of a goalkeeper at Inter Milan who didn't face that many shots, and when they did, they were kind of on the counter, I would say. He was able to play out with the ball at his feet. He goes to Manchester United, and across Ten Hag and Amorim, they say, we're going to kick the ball long, and we're also going to defend quite deep, which means, at Sunderland, your goalkeeper who would be expected to come out and claim crosses, for example, you might be, your shot stopping might be based on long shots or from the edge of the box, and sort of snapshots as well. Your reflexes have to be very good. Does change the sort of shots you have to face. You're going to be facing a lot more crosses and traffic, and like you said, kind of sitting in backs to the wall stuff. Now, I do think Bulka, there's some pros and cons in this regard. So I will say, in his first season at Nice, remember his first season as a senior goalkeeper, basically, he kept 16 clean sheets and 1 Player of the Year at Nice, and he only conceded 2 goals from outside the box. This season, he was a bit more. He had a bit of a rougher start, I think I'd say, to the season. It was still overall good, but compared to last season, where he conceded 2 goals from outside the box, this season it was, 2 years ago, 2 goals from outside the box. Last season, got to remember where we're at now, was 6 goals. So a bit of an increase there. But at the same time, I still think he'd be good for Sunderland for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'd expect you guys will face a lot of penalties just because the ball is going to be in your penalty area probably more than most other teams. And Bulka has saved 5 penalties already in his career. He's got quite a good reputation, actually, of being a pretty tough penalty goalkeeper. He's also really tall. He's 6'6". So I think sometimes where he can be a bit weak is shots quite low down to him because it just takes him a bit longer to get down. But he's got really good reach. So shots going towards the corners, he's pretty good, I'd say. He's also very good at claiming crosses as well. He's quite a reassuring presence. I think particularly on crosses, I make a distinction there. On corners, he seems to be, maybe because he's a bit of a younger keeper, so to speak, not super brave coming out. But when it comes to crosses, he's always ready on his line thinking, okay, if this ball comes in high, I'm going to come out and at least try and get a punch on it, which I think will be really helpful for Sunderland because you're probably going to be facing a lot of teams trying to camp you in, trying to cross the ball in. So should be someone to help you relieve pressure. And as well, I should say too, he's not a goalkeeper good with the ball at his feet in terms of, he could play nice little short passes and play lovely little build-up from the back. Well, you might not want that. You might want to go quite direct. I'd say as well with Bulka, he's a very good passer over long range, and with both feet too, which is really nice. I wouldn't go as far to say like to call him 2-footed, for example, but I think like his left foot tends to be his weaker one, but still on both feet he's generally pretty accurate. So that means hopefully he'll be able to give you a bit of a different angle there of if the ball comes back to him or he claims a cross, for example, he'll be able to spot maybe someone making a run on the halfway line and instantly try and reach him and hopefully be generally accurate trying to do so.
What would you say like, in terms of personality? Because obviously spoke a lot about his playing style, the way he is as a goalkeeper, but what's he like from a personality perspective? Because this is quite interesting because I would say that the majority of good Sunderland goalkeepers have been big personalities, but our current goalkeeper, Anthony Patterson, is actually quite reserved and calm. And we've heard a lot of people who've worked with Patterson. We've had David Priest on this podcast who worked with him a couple of seasons ago as the goalkeeper coach at Sunderland. And he was talking about how his biggest strength is the fact that he just, he's unflappable. And I'm just interested to hear what kind of personality Bulka is. Is he a typical goalkeeper who's a bit mad, or is he a reserved character too?
I'd say he's a reserved character, but he at the same time he has had a couple of lashes out, which has been fun. I remember there was a fan who criticised him quite heavily on social media, and he responded in a bit like tongue in cheek, like I think he was saying you should send your CV into Ligue or something like that. But he's generally quite calm, and I actually like in research for this. I went through. There's a paper called Nice Matin, just reports on everything Nice in the south of France. And there was a really good question they asked him was like, how do you deal with criticism from fans? It was based off earlier in the season, like I said, when he was getting a bit more criticism, mainly because he played so well in his first campaign, and even a slight drop off from that is going to invite questions. And, when you hear footballers asked like, oh, do you pay attention to criticism online? How do you deal with it? The classic stock answer, right, is, oh, I just don't see that stuff, I don't even notice it. And Bulka actually went a different route. I've got his answer in full, which I'll read. People who say otherwise, as in they don't listen to it, are lying. When I was much younger, it took to my head. I wanted revenge, but today it's changed a lot. I know how to distance myself. Criticism, you can't avoid it, even if you want to. You see what is written in newspapers. We all have a phone. But it doesn't affect me too much. Contrary to the remarks of my loved ones, the staff who push me up. When you play very well, there will always be people who look to criticise you anyway. It's inevitable. You just have to keep your head up, stay calm, and focus on your work. Now, that was translated from French. It might be a little bit rough, but I think that's an interesting answer there. He's admitting that there is criticism. He will read it, and perhaps sometimes it will slightly get to him. But he does seem quite a calm goalkeeper who is pretty strong, like mentally. Just a couple of things on his character, which is quite fun as well. This season, Nice, like I said, they finished in the Champions League spots. Last season, though, when they did start quite well under Farioli, they dropped off towards the end. And Bulka was one of the people who would come out in the media and not slam his teammates, but he would be one of the leaders saying, like, we can do much better than this, and demanding a lot more from them. And in terms of goalkeeping idols, so it's a fun one. His idol, he says, is Edwin van der Sar, but he's good friends with Thibaut Courtois, who he obviously got to train with at Chelsea as well. So not bad goalkeepers to look up to there, I'd say.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Chelsea there, and he started out as a young player there, didn't he? What do you? This is a very difficult question, I think, but still, when you sign a foreign player, the first concern, certainly from my opinion, other than are they good enough, is are they going to be able to cope with, I guess in this instance, Premier League football? I nearly said Championship. Got to try and get my head around that, the fact we're not there anymore. But Premier League football, coming over to England, the lifestyle differences, all those sort of things. Is that anything to be concerned about with him? Or do you think, he's been here before, knows England a little bit, it might set him up well?
I think off the field, you're right there. I think he'd probably be okay, given he did move to Chelsea at a really young age as well. I think when we talk about players getting a bit disturbed, like moving like scenery, it does tend to be younger players, just in my experience of doing this last few years. I always read up on, I think Ugo Ekitike is one who's obviously thriving in Germany at the moment. I remember he moved, I think it was to Denmark, I want to say, at a really young age, and he said like that was a really big change for him, and he had to take quite a bit of time to adjust. But having Bulka having already been at Chelsea at a young age and then gone to France, he's already immigrated from his home country of Poland. I think he'll be fine in that regard. In terms of getting used to Premier League football, obviously goalkeeper is a position where I think you're more isolated from league changes because fundamentally you have one job, stop shots going in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And unless you're going from one really low level to a higher level, I don't think the shots are going to change that much in quality. But I guess there's two aspects I'd say where you might want to look for. One of them I think he'll do very well. The other, he might have a bit of a learning curve. So one I think he'll do very well is the intensity under the press. So in France, it's a very physical league, but I would say the presses in France don't tend to be as well organised as they are in the Premier League. They're not as well set up to exploit weaknesses. There's only, I'd say, 10 or 12 teams, I would say, who are on Premier League level in terms of pressing, right? Whereas the others, I think, if they try to press in the Premier League, they'd get cut apart very easily. Now, I'm saying that because there might be a bit of an adjustment there. Bulka going, okay, I thought I was doing well under pressure in France, but I'm moving to England, and wow, the pressure here is very different. I haven't got as much time on the ball, for example. However, I recently watched him. I watched him back against PSG. Nice beat them 3-1 a few weeks ago. In fairness, they had wrapped the league up, but he was still getting put under pretty fierce pressure from Ousmane Dembele, who I think has been one of the best pressers in Europe actually this season. And it goes back to what I was saying before. His goalkeeper is very happy to pass on both feet. He's pretty comfortable under pressure. So I really back him actually to do well in the Premier League on that front in terms of on the ball. I'd be surprised if he makes many, if at all, errors on the ball in terms of passing it to an opponent. He should be pretty good on that front, or just getting rattled under pressure. The area where I might have a little bit more of a concern is how teams target his weakness. So if you watch the Champions League final, you might have noticed, I know my boss Joe Devine actually noticed this, the man of all football opinions, that every PSG player tried to shoot to Sommer's near post. It's very clearly had identified that the Inter goalkeeper had a weakness there. Funnily enough, Bulka definitely has the same thing. He seems to be quite slow getting across to his near post, and the goals he conceded this season, there is a pattern of him leaving a bit too much space there, and then players being able to hit it in. Now, if you look at all of his goals conceded like this, it will make the issue look a lot bigger than it is, because fundamentally he's still had a good season goalkeeper wise, and he's still been good in Ligue as a shot stopper. We're not trying to detract from that. It's just if you're going to score against him, near post is probably where you'll do it. And I suspect in the Premier League, where clubs have the money to employ analysts and staff that French clubs do not, at least across the board, I suspect more teams will be aware of this, and they might look to target it in the same way PSG did against Inter. So maybe that is something to watch out for. See if teams try and consistently hit him at the near post. Hopefully for your sake, if he does join, they do not. And hopefully as well, he just tries to lock down on that, and it's something that can be improved before the start of the season, or at least across the course of the season.
Yeah, well, I think all players have their weaknesses, don't they? So you kind of expect when you sign somebody that they're going to have some flaws, but as long as the strengths outweigh the weaknesses, then you'll be fairly happy. The move itself is interesting because I don't think a lot of Sunderland fans were expecting us to try and replace Anthony Patterson. It's kind of thrown his situation up in the air. Is he staying? Is he going? Is he going to be a number two? Is Bulka coming in as a number two and challenging? I mean, the question I've got is, do you think he would even consider this move if he wasn't already coming to be a number one? Because it's a well-established position, that one. Anthony Patterson's been Sunderland's number one for 3.5 years now. And it just makes you think. A lot of money, highly rated player, probably got many good options. Is he going to be coming here to add competition, or is he coming here, do you think, to come in as a number one?
It's interesting. So for full transparency, I don't watch the Championship. So
yeah.
Patterson, I do not know how good he is. Obviously, I'm going to take your word for it, of course. That said, I know Bulka. I know I don't know Bulka personally, but I know he'd only join if he's going to be a starter. To repeat, he would have, if he stays at Nice, there's a very high chance he'll be playing Champions League football next season. He would not give that up to be second choice at a newly promoted side. And on the Sunderland side, Like I said, I don't know your club very well. I'm going to look to learn a lot about you guys this summer, as you guys in the Premier League are now properly on my radar. What I will say is I have done a lot of research actually into the gap between the Premier League and the Championship, and what you should do in order to stay up in the Premier League. I think it's no secret it has got a lot harder in recent years. The last 2 seasons, all 3 teams who got promoted went down, and that's only happened 3 times in Premier League history, right? And when I looked into this, I basically went through all the underlying data I could for all promoted teams going back to 2006. And the big conclusion I came away with was you've got a better chance of staying in the Premier League by having a better defence than if you were to prioritise your attack. Defence is what will keep you in the Premier League. And considering the gap there is right now, as good as Patterson may be for Sunderland, I still think this would be like a sensible move, because if you want to stay in the Premier League on your first season back, to try and make that a reality, you go and sign one of the best goalkeepers in Europe. If you rely on someone who might have been good in the Championship or might be very good there, I'm not saying he can't be good in the Premier League, Patterson, but I think promoted teams recently have taken that risk and it's not worked out. So I completely understand why like the higher ups in Sunderland might instead go, listen, we want to stay in the Premier League. We are just going to have to spend the big money. And that is also another thing of what you need to do to stay in the Premier League as well. All the teams who stay up, especially in the last decade, they spend big. So as heartbreaking as it might be to see that a goalkeeper you like get essentially relegated to second choice, if you want to stay in the Premier League, signing Bulka is probably the best move.
Yeah, that was the answer I was expecting. And I think the one most people are, the conclusion most people are coming to, because as well as Patterson's done for Sunderland, I still think a lot of people are on the fence about him. He had a great playoff final. He won man of the match in the playoff final and made 2 world-class saves. And he's an academy product, and there's a lot of sentiment there. He's been part of 2 promotion-winning teams, but I think you're right. You've got to try and give yourself the best possible chance. And if that means some of your more popular players losing out, you've got to be ruthless, haven't you? I think that gap between the Championship and the Premier League is massive. And look, if you're not ruthless, you're gonna end up getting relegated, I think, is the top and bottom of it.
Yeah, the extreme example of this is Nottingham Forest, right? Strip away their season this campaign, because I think that is impressive. But I think what's more interesting is the 2 years before that. What Forest have done, I think, is what I've described them, but like I said, the extreme version. They've gone, we need to stay in the Premier League, so we just need to build a Premier League squad. And they tore up the entire team. They obviously broke the rules by spending too much. And they just built a Premier League squad essentially from scratch. They bought loads of players, not all of them worked out. But as much as everyone laughed at them at the time, said, what are Forest doing? Like, oh, look, they signed their 100th player or whatever. It worked out, right? It worked out a lot better than the other teams that came up. So that is, sadly, in current reality, this is kind of the strategy you need to have.
Well, but anybody who's not particularly sure about this one, because there'll be a lot of Sunderland fans who've never heard the name, probably have no knowledge of the French division, and are looking at this and thinking, I'm not sure about this one. What would you say to them?
Oh, I'd say, as much as you can be nervous about a new signing, and as much as I generally tend to be conservative about signings, you might not know me, but if you were to look at my posts on players, there's been very good players who I've recently gone, not sure about this guy, not sure about this guy. Bulka is Bulka to Sunderland, I think, is just a brilliant move. I think that's really sensible business. I know it might seem nervous, him coming from Ligue, a league that often doesn't get its plaudits, it often gets derided. I'd say, first of all, goalkeeper, remember, it's not really a position where you'd expect too much change going from league to league. But still, Bulka has been one of French football's best goalkeepers. And I think it's a massive coup, to be honest, that Sunderland are getting him. To go back to the start, I'm really surprised they are the team that are able to get him. To reiterate, he could be playing Champions League football next season, but you've managed to convince him to join your team and try and survive the fight to avoid relegation. That's impressive.
And just very quickly to touch on it, obviously, I'm going to butcher this name, Gisolfi, the incoming director of football at Sunderland, obviously worked for Nice previously in a similar role. I presume you're like me and thinking he's had a big role to play in this.
Yeah, do you know what? That's something I hadn't actually considered, because I know Ghisolfi's been praised for a lot of other moves, to be honest, and that one flew past my radar. But yeah, I that also probably has a big deal to it. I'd also suspect as well, like other players. I mean, this is just pure speculation from me, but Bulka probably has a relegation clause put in, right? And he's thinking, even if we go down, if I do a good job, then someone else will pick me up.
Yeah.
I guess the negative here is probably that if you guys don't survive your first season in the Premier League, I would be quite surprised if Bulka stays in the Championship. He must have to love you guys a lot to do that, because even though he is still relatively young for a goalkeeper, I think one of his quality, he'd just be completely outsized in the Championship. He'd be the best player there, at least on current form and current quality.
I think, given the fact that we seem to be targeting the French leagues with not just players but managers and a director of football, as I just mentioned, that this might not be the last time we chat over the summer, Alex. But thank you very much for your insight. It's been amazing. I'm totally filled in on everything about this guy, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him play, if I'm honest. I think if we can get this deal over the line, it's going to make a lot of people excited. And I think your words might have just added to that. So thank you very much.
Oh, no worries. It was a pleasure. And yeah, like you say, if you sign more French players or other players from Europe, I'd be more than happy to come back on. And yeah, if any Sunderland fans who feel strongly about this move, please feel free to come and contact me. Because like I said, I want to get more involved in your club as you get back into the Premier League, and try and watch you guys across the season.
Fantastic. Where can people find you, by the way, if they want to read your stuff and catch up with you on social media and all that, the rest of it?
So you can find my personal account on Twitter, or X as it's now unfortunately known, at Alexander BRKR. You can also find me on The Athletic, where I post videos every week. At the moment, it's all on sensible transfers. Sunderland may very well come up in that later in the summer. But yeah, you can find me doing lots of content there, and like I said, on my personal account too.
Fabulous. Well, thank you very much, Alex, and thank you very much to the listeners. We've got plenty coming over the next week or so, pods every single day coming out of our ears here on How We Look Podcast. So make sure you get subscribed if this is the first time you've heard us. Thanks so much. Bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.